Most people think emergencies only happen to other people. Well, Andrew and I are here because we know that's not always the case. I'm David. I'm a volunteer firefighter and EMT in King County in the Seattle area.
My name is Andrew. I'm a career firefighter in the Seattle area, captain assigned to the heavy rescue just north of Seattle, also in King County.
Between the two of us, we've seen what happens when things go sideways and what helps turn those situations around.
Welcome to Straight Stick.
Engine 152, Rescue 151, and Battalion 181 respond to an audience hungry for firefighter news, stories, and information. You're listening to Straight Stick.
Andrew, we should share a little bit about us and the motivation for creating this podcast. Tell us about how you got started in the fire service and where you work and live.
So I got started as a volunteer in Belfair out on the peninsula. I did that for a couple years and then got hired full-time at Fire Department in North King County, where I've been for the last 25 years. Currently a captain. I am on the wildland team. I'm also on the FEMA Washington State USAR search and rescue team. And I live on Whidbey Island in the Puget Sound with a wife and 3 kids.
Very exciting. And Whidbey, I think it's one of the largest islands in the world, isn't it? Have you heard that?
It is. It's one of the longest, skinny island in the Puget Sound. Yes.
Okay. Oh, very cool. Well, like you, I also live on an island. We're both in the Seattle area. My island is Vashon Island, much smaller than Whidbey. I'm a volunteer firefighter with King County Fire District 27 in Fall City, but I started my career in EMS with the American Red Cross, and later I was an EMT in Maryland with the Bethesda Chevy Chase Rescue Squad. And interestingly, I did not come to the world of structural firefighting till I had a midlife crisis. Some people go out and buy fancy cars. I decided to work my butt off and train to become a firefighter. And it was, for sure, as you know, very hard work, as any structural firefighter will know. But I made it through it, and I joined Eastside Fire and Rescue, and I was a volunteer firefighter there for 10 years. And then the last few years, I've been with Fall City, as I mentioned. Andrew, most of us live in an area of the country where, under most circumstances, day to day, we can truly rely upon our emergency services. When we call 911, in most cases, people like you and me when I'm on duty respond to those calls within 5 to 7 minutes or so. And that's for medical emergencies, fires, car wrecks. And it's truly a realistic assumption that we'll be there. The system is really well designed. But if we add in a big natural disaster, a terrorist event, or some other large unexpected event, I think it's not unrealistic to assume that our emergency services just won't be there to respond to everyone, and that we need to think about how we can help ourselves and our own families and neighbors, correct?
Exactly. So as you stated, the 911 system is staffed at a level to handle day-to-day emergencies. The administration of your fire department sets up the staffing levels and is overseen by city council or commissioners, and they do the best they can with what they've got. So it is impossible to staff apparatus to a level that can handle disasters. That's not financially feasible or responsible of taxpayer money. So at some point, citizens are going to be left for longer periods without emergency services just because the need is so great, not because the departments haven't staffed properly. It's just when everyone needs 911, then 911 will be delayed. It's not possible to serve everyone. So yes, we are hoping to educate and get people some knowledge to handle their own issues in the time of need, whether it be the first 72 minutes after a disaster or the first 72 hours.
Yeah, and we mentioned earlier that we are both in the Pacific Northwest in the Seattle area, and this is a well-known earthquake zone. So not only do we have to potentially contend with earthquakes, but also the mud flows that can happen from those events. And they can be massive disasters. I know we've also had big landslides in our area. Were you involved in the Oso disaster?
I was on the team. I did not go up to Oso, but no, many people did. That was a horrific disaster. Whole
Truly, truly
hillside came
tragic
down.
that a whole
So
hill collapses. And then obviously lots of parts of the country also have to deal with wildfires. And that can be devastating because we've created population areas in some of the most beautiful parts of the country that are heavily forested.
yes, and I've gone down to I've been down to Napa, California a couple of times, and I've been in camps with 5,000 firefighters. And down the road, 20 miles down the road, was another camp with 3,000 firefighters. The amount of resources that can be put into place to help people is astonishing, but that takes days. We got there 3 days after the incident started, and everyone's doing what they can. So help will be coming, but it will take some time to get there.
Andrew, part of our motivation for this podcast was to help educate people about what to do in emergencies. And a lot of that really starts with their own home. Now, you created a platform a few years ago called Dwell Secure. And I know actually I'm involved in that peripherally now as a new version is being rolled out. But can you tell us a little bit about the platform? What was the motivation for creating it? And we might as well say this is like Dwell Secure will be our unofficial sponsor of this episode. And but it's your platform. I think over the next many episodes, we'll occasionally talk about it. We're not here to sell people on it because it's a free service for consumers. But what motivated you to create it, and tell us what it is?
So I have been teaching disaster preparedness classes to the citizens in the area where I work for over 20 years. And I explain how the 911 system works, who's coming when you call 911, what happens at the dispatch center, all of those things. And then I explain that after an earthquake that could be coming to this area, that services will be delayed. So I asked who knows how to shut off their gas. And in the first 4 classes, there was one individual who knew how to shut his gas off. So that's where the idea came from. There will be issues that pop up and emergency services will be delayed. So you can search that information up, but when the time you need it comes, you're going to need it right away. So the idea came to store information in your phone for gas, water, and power. If you have arcing electrical outlets, or if you need instructions on how to start your generator, if you have broken water main inside your house and you have water flowing inside, damaging your structure, or God forbid, a broken gas line, you have gas flowing inside your structure, these are immediate needs you need to address. So the app allows you to store locations, instructions, and brief descriptions on what you need to do to secure those utilities. That's how it started. And then it morphed into, well, if we're going to talk about shutoff instructions, then let's talk about maintenance reminders. Let's talk about all the systems in your home. Let's talk about changing your smoke detector batteries, changing your furnace filters, cleaning out your dryer vents, servicing your water heater, all of those things. So it now becomes a platform to store all of the information for your home, send you reminders. When that reminder pops up, it tells you who the vendor is you use that you've entered into the app. And then you can keep your systems working as they should. And in case of an emergency, there is instruction on how to secure those utilities if you have a problem.
That sounds like a very useful application. And it's clear, as you said, most people just don't know where those services are in their own home. And obviously, if there's a gas leak, I think get everybody out of the house, call the fire department. If there's a water leak, you definitely need help, call a plumber, but finding that cutoff valve before hundreds of gallons pour into your home is so important. And I should say, too, that it's not always for when you're home, too. Wouldn't it be great if your neighbor knew how to turn off your water, or your neighbor could assist in some of these emergencies? So I think one of the
Yes.
important features of Dwell Secure is to be able to share these details with a trusted family member, a neighbor. And I think eventually Dwell Secure will have a mode where first responders can access part of those details when they come to a home. It could be a large property with many structures on it. And this would help first responders identify where some of those services are, as well as, are there any people on the property or properties that need special assistance? Perhaps someone that needs wheelchair access, or a pet, or many pets. So these are all the things that a homeowner can document and then share with other people. So good on you for creating Dwell Secure, and I hope it's wildly successful, because, again, the time about learning how to deal with an emergency is not when the emergency happens, right?
Correct. And I work, as you do, we work long hours when we go to the fire station. So I am gone for extended periods, and then I'll get deployed to a wildland fire or deployed to a hurricane. I'll be gone for 2 weeks at a time. I live on Whidbey Island, on the north end of the island. There's a Naval Air Station, Whidbey. My wife's a school teacher, and almost half the kids in her school are children of people in the Navy. And those people get deployed for 6 to 9 months at a time. So this is another way for first responders and military personnel to enter all the information needed in the home and share that with their loved ones when they're away. So it's not always, but oftentimes, if it's the first responder or the military personnel in a partnership, it's often that partner who is the mechanical one and usually handles those type of situations. So this is a way that individual could share all of that information with their loved ones when they're not around to handle the emergencies.
Important features. Well, I should say, in general, we are going to talk about Dwell Secure from time to time and bring up features in it. But we have very lofty plans for the podcast. We're both passionate about firefighting and first responding in the EMS space, and we both enjoy talking. So future episodes, I should say, we plan to talk about calls that we've been on that would be useful to other listeners from an educational standpoint. I think we'll talk about some disaster preparedness myths, what people can and should do, and some of the things that, maybe aren't so useful. And hopefully we'll have a bunch of guest firefighters and EMTs, as well as chiefs and industry experts joining us from time to time. And then we will certainly talk about disaster readiness in many of our episodes, and what homeowners and residents can do within their communities to prepare for earthquakes, power outages, wildfires, etc. And then community stories as well. What we probably won't be talking about or focusing on, politics, except when it is narrowly related to first responders. For example, some of the politics related to what happened with 9/11 and cancers and lung diseases that occurred afterward. There were certainly political ramifications to those events. We're not going to talk about tactical fantasy or trauma porn. We have to protect the privacy and sensitive nature of the calls that we're on. I think we're going to hit on some of those things, but probably using the backdrop of what people see in movies and TV shows, and talk about sometimes how realistic they are and sometimes how silly they are.
We will certainly share some stories with the focus being on there'll be some humor, and but mainly educational. So the stories that we will share will not be in a salacious manner. Will be respectful to the people that were involved in those incidents.
I think I think people will find it entertaining and educational, and hopefully we'll get firefighters to basically send us comments and questions so that we can derive some of our future content from their interests and what's important to them. And if nothing else, we hope the show makes you pause and ask a question. If something happened tonight, would you be ready? And do you know how to turn the water off in your home if a flood starts? Or do you know what to do if, this is the medical side, if you're walking down the street and someone collapses in front of you? I mean, are you trained? I think we can be proud, you and I, being in the Seattle area, that we have one of the highest success rates for CPR for witnessed arrests. And it's astounding.
Yes.
And it's because our population is so well trained. So what can we do to help other people get motivated to train themselves to prepare for disasters of all sorts?
Right. Preparedness, it's an act of care. You don't have to be able to do everything, but just educate yourself to be able to do something.
Well, this podcast, I hope, will be an ongoing conversation about emergencies and disaster preparedness. We don't want it to be a sermon, but we think these are important topics for everyone to be aware of. And we really didn't explain what the title of the podcast is about, so we've called it Straight Stick. Why don't you explain what that means?
So the fire service straight stick is a simple ground ladder. No gimmicks, no hydraulics, just, skills and fundamentals, something that all firefighters can use to, like, physically and figuratively elevate themselves, right? So it's a straightforward we're going to have straightforward conversations about emergencies, preparedness, and things we've learned the hard way while we're on calls and in the fire station.
Well, I have a personal story about big ladders. I have a very healthy respect for heights. And when I went through my academy a long time ago, the entire class was invited to climb a 100-foot ladder, a platform on top. And it was optional. And I kind of took that optional as like, okay, I'll sit this one out. Now, just to be clear, I'm not against being in high structures. So the lieutenant for that drill brought the platform down to the ground. I hopped in. We secured ourselves on the platform and we proceeded to go up to the top. And it was a beautiful sight overlooking Issaquah. And it wasn't bad. I knew it was safe because it was an engineered solution, just like I'm fine in a skyscraper or in a Disney ride. But I just didn't want to climb the ladder. And I found out years later that in our class, we were not wearing any safety harness. So kind of a little bit of a risky maneuver for the first day of an academy. But I think you have told me that this is now a required skill for people signing up to be part of fire departments. Is that true?
So for our fire department, yes. So it's now part of the interview process. When you show up, I'm sure we'll talk in another episode about the process of getting hired. But when you show up for your oral board portion of the process, it used to be just go upstairs, sit in a room, answer questions. Now we actually have another physical you do. You carry heavy barrels, you drag a dummy, you carry hose up the stairs. And because your issue with the climbing the ladder is not uncommon, it's now part of the testing process, but we will put you in a class 3 harness. We'll run a rope all the way up to the tip of the ladder and bring it back down and have a fall prevention device as you climb up and then tend the device as you climb down. So yes, we do. It is now part of our process because you are not alone in your hesitation to climb a ladder. Yes.
Let's call it a healthy respect for heights.
Yes.
At the time I had a young daughter and I was like, nope, this is just not, as a volunteer too, that's really tall. It's a little, Seattle area is often moist with, and so slippery ladders. So,
yes.
Yeah. But, it's impressive to see, folks like yourself, well-trained, in using that equipment up there. So props to you for doing all of that stuff. So we'll talk a lot more about that as you mentioned in future episodes. I think that's all we've got. So I think it's important that we say that if you're going to be on duty soon this week, if a shift is coming up, we want you to be we want it to be exciting and fun, but we also want you to be safe.
Thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to joining you in the next episode of Straight Stick.
Attention, all units. All of the content of Straight Stick is copyright protected. Don't forget to subscribe so you hear the tones when future episodes drop.